Welcome to Audible Insights, brought to you by the Insights Association and hosted by David Paul, founder of Dialsmith and Lillian Labs.
We're coming to you live from the floor of the Corporate Researchers Conference by the Insights Association in Orlando, and I'm joined for this episode by Curtis Cobb. Curtis is Director of Research, Demography, and Survey Science at Facebook. Curtis, thanks for giving us some of your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell everyone a little bit about the work that you do at Facebook.
Yeah, so I lead a unique team at Facebook. We're not product-embedded researchers like you would normally expect at a tech company. Instead, we're a group of research methodologists who tackle tough issues that span across the company, where there's not really a tried-and-true method that exists to answer some of the questions that we seek to understand. A lot of the work that we do is global, and so there's a lot of cross-cultural components where we have to be able to have something work both in the US or in Europe, where there are mature market research communities, as well as in the developing world where, let's say, there are less mature infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So can you talk a little bit about some of the unique challenges around that, and I guess even better, some of the ways that you've been able to solve those challenges and collect the data where you need to collect it as quickly as you need to collect it?
Yeah, the real trade-off for almost everything we do is the speed versus rigor. Tech companies in particular, really like to get answers immediately, and a lot of the projects that we have to do would take normal processes, or let's say if they were happening in academia, a couple of years, or with government, and we have to constrain those to what can we do in 3 months.
Okay.
And so we... the way that we handle that is we actually build in a lot of methodological tests into our existing studies. So, for example, if we're trying to understand something in the developing world, we'll use a variety of modes at once and then do, let's say for collecting survey data, both various panels, various mobile designs versus in-person designs, etc., telephone designs, and we'll actually do large comparisons, and some of that stuff we actually release publicly to provide insights. We also, so one of the issues that I've been dealing with is that Facebook is constantly wanting to know how internet penetration is changing around the world. And as you can imagine, that's something that's really hard to get because it includes everyone who's not on the internet, which is what allows us to operate more quickly in getting insights.
Yep.
And so we've actually been, for example, working with some faculty at UC Berkeley to try to understand how well, for example, the Facebook platform can be used to do network sampling to estimate offline population sizes.
Oh, wow.
So where people can essentially proxy report on those that they have engagement with and how close that can get. That's only possible because we have really good estimates in the developed world that we're able to compare against and do bias correction with, but then take those same methods and apply them to the developing world and understand the nuances there.
Yeah. Something that was really interesting about what you said earlier in that answer, it sounded like one of your, I'll call it a trick, not to demean it, but one of your hacks to get things done more quickly is rather than taking 2 years to go really deep with one methodology, you go really hard in a short period of time, but with multiple methodologies so that you can cross-validate. And in a way, you're trading that length of time for a lot more work in a shorter period of time, and of course the investment in staff and financial investment that takes as well.
Absolutely. And the truth is that a lot of the topics that we're touching on for research, they're complex topics, policy topics, etc. So thinking about, for example, Facebook has announced that it's going to push further on end-to-end encryption. How can we understand how people react to that? Using one method has the disadvantage of that just with complex topics in low information environments, that the method you use, the answer is highly sensitive to.
Right.
And so the triangulation that you're talking about of using multiple methods allows us both to push forward in the future and understand what we could do for other problems to possibly move quickly, but it also gives us a better answer for what we're studying right then.
Yeah. So how would you package up a key takeaway for other researchers who can learn from your experience, selfishly kind of steal a little bit of your secret sauce of how you've learned to do some of these really complex things? What would be a key takeaway or piece of advice that you'd encourage people to think more about that you think maybe they don't as much?
Well, I know one of the things that the tech industry suffers from, and researchers within the tech industry suffer from, is that they don't actually realize that a lot of these issues that they're dealing with have been wholly or partially solved by other researchers in other fields. Yeah. And so, to your point, I steal methods constantly and try to adapt them rather than trying to come up with wholly new things.
Right.
And so coming to conferences like this, the Insights Association, where I can see what pharma's doing, where I could see what retail is doing, where I can see what consumer packaged goods are doing, it allows me to not only generate ideas for the types of problems I'm struggling with, but also see how they applied them, where I thought it worked, where it didn't work, and really push.
Yeah.
Like any researcher or scientist or anything like that, right? We all stand on the shoulders of others.
Right.
And so I don't try to do things de novo. I try to do adaptation.
That's great. I really appreciate that. That's a solid takeaway. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate a few minutes of your time, and I hope you get a lot of value out of CRC this year. So far, it's been a great show.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find all our episodes by searching Audible Insights on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and by visiting insightsassociation.org/audible. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.